If you love brooding heroes, magical kingdoms, and relationships that start in one out of, I don't know, maybe five different ways, then today's discussion just might be for you. Today, I'll be discussing romantasy and culture with Taylor Duncan. Welcome to Spencer Reads Everything. I'm your host, Spencer Duncan, and today myself and my sister-in-law Taylor, are discussing romantic fantasy, or as some call it, romantasy, which has absolutely exploded in popularity, but it also gets a lot of hate. Some people love it for the drama, the magic, and of course those spicy, spicy scenes. Others claim it's just the same recycled tropes over and over again. So today we're going to settle this debate once and for all, and to help me do that, I brought in an expert on all things romantasy. My fellow bookworm, my good friend by choice, and my relative by happenstance is my sister-in-law, Taylor Duncan. Taylor, would you like to introduce yourself and explain your romantasy bona fides?
Oh gosh. Yeah, I'm Spencer's sister-in-law. I have loved reading. Fantasy was my gateway drug into reading. I
What was
really
the
struggled
first
as a young
romantasy series you read?
romantasy specifically. I guess this is kind of going to go into our conversation of like what is considered romantasy. Probably what most, well, oh gosh. Uh, okay, so Throne of Glass is probably what the general public would say, like that's romantasy. But there's lots of YA fantasy that I think if it were published today would be categorized more as romantasy, but definitely was not at the time. But yeah, so I think Throne of Glass is probably, especially as an adult, the first one that I can think of that's like classified in that vein. I don't know that I necessarily classify it that personally. But yeah, I think that's probably it.
Okay. And when it goes to the amount of books that you read in a year, or I guess just what percentage of the books you read would you say
Mhm.
fall within romantasy or within at least the disputed territory of romantasy?
Yeah, I read about between 30 and 50 books a year typically. Um,
Dare I ask how
and
many you read and how many you listen to?
so that's a good question. It depends on the year. This year and last year, I've really struggled with audiobooks, and so I would say it's probably two-thirds reading and one-third listening. I'm trying this year, I usually try and have one audiobook and one regular book running at the same time. So it might be a
Okay.
little more even this year. It just kind of depends. But then like 2 or 3 years ago, I would have said they're all audiobooks. So it's a pretty healthy mix, I would say.
I initially tried to do mostly physical reading
Mhm.
and just have a few audiobooks. Also, I did start, I've been using Overdrive and Libby for quite a while, long before they became nearly as quality
What they are.
libraries as they used to be. And so
Yeah.
I could never expect to find like a book I really wanted to listen to. I'd always just kind of like flip through and sometimes be surprised, be like, oh, they have a fair amount of Bill Bryson books. I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'll listen to all the Bill Bryson books or
Mhm.
something just because they have them. And so I made
Yeah.
it a point of trying to actually read more than I would listen to. And then that disparity has just, I mean, has gone out the window. And I now listen to way more than I read. I just, I don't have a ton of time to actually sit down and read a book. I do try to always have one or two books that I am physically reading at any given time, but I would say by the end of the year, they make up maybe 10% of the books I read at most. It's almost
Yeah.
entirely audio at this point.
I think that's like what changed. Like when I had one kid, audiobooks was way more convenient. But now that I have two and they entertain each other, I can sit down and read while they're playing.
Yeah,
So
my daughter, she's not like that. If I
not
were to
very
sit
good.
down and try to read a physical book, well, I don't know how long that book would stay in one piece. I don't know how, I
Yeah.
mean, let alone her just simply saying, "Daddy, Daddy," clearly just wanting my attention. So, I am, jealous of your chance to actually physically read books.
Different phases of life for sure. And I can't do actual hard copies because my children will take those. They have such an affinity for like turning the pages and stuff, which I love, but a little bit difficult to, complete the task you're trying to. So I do ebooks mostly, like on my Kindle.
Getting back to the topic at hand, I believe you wanted to at least add one caveat before we start our conversation. We are heteronormative individuals that are having a conversation about a subgenre and how we, only represent a certain percentage of the population, certainly not the entirety of the population.
Yeah, I was interesting as I was researching this topic. I learned a lot about this because a lot of my thoughts and opinions about this are very gendered and I would say like feminist in nature, my approach. But what I realized was looking at female authors versus male authors and this genre is that there are actually a lot of men that are writing and acknowledge it's like romantasy, but they're just writing like queer stories, which I
Mm.
haven't delved into. But so yeah, our conversation will not be delving into that because I don't believe you have a lot of experience there. I
Can't
definitely
say that I
don't.
do.
Yeah, so we don't have any MLM, stories to talk about. I'm not familiar with those authors, but there are a lot of them from what
Well,
I could.
and I have to concede that the romantasy that I do read, it's only going to be the most popular of romantasy because that's
Yeah.
the only reason I'm really reading it is to be aware of what is currently in the zeitgeist. And
Hmm.
sometimes it's fine. Sometimes I enjoy the book, even if there's elements of it I don't care for. But then there's times where I really, really struggle and I just can't understand why it's so popular, which is
Yeah.
why you're here to help explain that.
Yeah, it is blowing up right now.
Well, with that, let's move into our first section, which I have dubbed Dragons, Dukes, and Dubious Consent, the Wild World of Romantasy. Would you
Love that.
care to expand upon what exactly your grievances are on how romantasy is characterized, especially this sense that it is frequently regarded as bad literature?
So I think what's hard about the genre is that there is no consensus on definition. There isn't like a Wikipedia page that I could find with like this is, it and like publishers and authors, they all have different ways of defining it. And then readers also have vastly different ways to describe it. Even as you were like going in the intro, I was like, yeah, I agree with that, some of it, but some of it, I'm like, I don't think that has to be in there to be considered romantasy.
Hmm.
Such as like spicy scenes, things like that. And I think that a lot of the conversation is kind of inherently like misogynistic and not on purpose. It just is kind of so ingrained in everything that female authors are the ones primarily writing this genre. And
The big thing that I think that you generally point out as a defense is this fact that it doesn't have a clear definition.
yeah,
And I get the impression when you're saying that, I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but I get the impression that very frequently the the most common element of calling something romantasy as opposed to something else is you're automatically giving it this air of lower quality literature. So you could find a piece of work that matches romantasy in any other metric that you could think of, whether it's the spice scenes, whether it's the fact that it's written by a woman, the fact that romance is a key element of the plot line, and yet you frequently may not still consider it romantasy if it is also considered really good literature. And so I get the impression, in our conversations at least, when you take issue with the labeling of romantasy and the reason why it may not have any kind of strict definition that you think you would agree with, that's because the commonality tends to be a dismissiveness of the genre. And that
yeah.
feels like an unfair, way of approaching romantasy.
Well, and I think it really depends on the person describing it because I don't think it's always a negative connotation. But like if a man is asking, is this fantasy or is this romantasy? In my head, I'm just thinking, are you just trying to imply, is this good writing or is this bad writing? Like, should I
Hmm.
dismiss this or should I be interested in reading it? And I just don't find that that's fair. And you have that in female reviewers too. I just really struggle with this idea that romantasy has to be bad because although there are not great ones, it's the same with literally any other genre that there's great options and bad options.
Well, yes, but I think this is a point that we've gone over that I think is the big sticking point, and that is that that is certainly true. Any genre is going to have both good and bad, but there seems to be more permissiveness in romantasy to have some major flaws that you are not likely to find in other genres. Simple, obvious editing or clear plotline holes that just don't make any sense, or obviously, I think the spice scenes are one of the things that define romantasy. But like I said, you can have that in another genre, and as long as it is considered good literature in all other respects, you might tell people that that spice scene is in that book, but you are not necessarily going to characterize it as romantasy because it doesn't seem to have a lot of the other baggage that the term romantasy would come with. And so I would challenge you to respond to that element because I have a feeling you don't completely disagree with me that there is more permissiveness in having some pretty blatant errors in romantasy than in other subgenres.
I think that I don't know how familiar you are with like Kindle Unlimited and the books available there. A lot of times they're self-published or indie
Hmm.
published, and so you have different levels of editing oversight with those
Hmm.
that are not necessarily romantasy. Romance, just regular contemporary. Like there's lots of different genres on there, and I do think that they struggle with that same thing.
Hmm.
Um, I'm gonna try and not call out any specific series or author right now because I don't want I want to
That's
stay
okay. We have
positive,
that
and
coming.
everyone has different opinions.
we, we,
Huh?
we have that coming. The end of this, I have
Oh
one
no.
thing that is calling out who I think
Okay.
is a very bad author,
I think
and
that's
does not
because
merit the attention that she's getting.
I think it's hard because your experience in the genre is pretty limited, I would say. Like I can think of just a handful that you've read because there's one actually in my head that's even worse than the one you're thinking of, but very popular, like very, very popular. And I think what's hard about this and what's hard about where I struggle is there's different things that people are looking for when they're reading. And sometimes it's the plot, sometimes it's the spice or the smut, and sometimes you're looking for both. And I think sometimes it's hard to know what the priority is of an author. So even though the editing or the plot isn't great, if people are enjoying the other aspects of it, I wouldn't say it's a bad book. It might not be great literature,
Yeah,
which is how
I
you
mean,
see this spelling.
that is something that I've always had to concede, even when I read a book that I cringe the whole way through, and I personally
Mhm.
don't understand how it can be so popular. I
Yeah.
will not challenge the fact that if it is selling this well and so many people are loving it and they don't have the same hang-ups as I do, they just don't have the same hang-ups as I do for one reason or another. And I don't think
Mhm.
that that is necessarily a bad thing. It just means that's something else I don't understand, something in the culture I don't understand. And hey, I guess my bigger questions is it a good thing or a bad thing if the most popular books at the moment also have some just really bad elements to them. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying everything should be Shakespeare. I feel like everyone tries to say that when I complain about the quality of literature. I'm like, no, no, there's a world of difference between expecting everything I read to be
Yeah.
Shakespeare and everything I read to have at least been edited, to have at least talked through the storyline to someone so someone could say, wait, I think you have a few plot holes there. Or, to have someone read some of the dialogue out loud and be like, that's pretty stilted. I don't think that sounds very authentic. You might want to work on that scene a little bit. I don't feel like I'm asking too much in that respect. And so I guess my question
Yeah.
is, what does this mean for, us as a society, us as a people that promote reading? What does it mean for reading when most people talk about reading, I think generally are suggesting that you have a wide variety of books that you read, but it feels like a lot of people that read this genre, this dominates what they are likely to read. What do these types of concerns raise for us, or are they not concerns? Is this a rising tide lifts all boats type thing where it's like, you know what, more books being sold and more people reading is a good thing regardless. It is putting more money in the pockets of authors slash artists, and especially in the case of how popular audiobooks have become. I mean,
Mhm.
is there an argument to be made that, hey, it's all good even if it's not what you want it to be? I last year I was looking at the Pulitzer Prize, the books that had been nominated for finalists and the winners for the Pulitzer Prizes. And I would go and look on Amazon, and some of them would have like 200 reviews, as
Mhm.
opposed to, a Rebecca Yarros who has tens of thousands of reviews.
Yeah. Oh yeah, at
And
least.
I have to say, okay, well, I'm not expecting the same thing from the Pulitzer Prize finalists and authors. But is there any conflict here that is, crowding out what is admittedly a higher quality of literature when we go, especially for just sheer volume? I think that's also something that I struggle with when it comes to romantasy, is the sheer
Mm.
volume of it suggests to me that we're not even improving upon. I think we can point out at least one of the series that we're definitely thinking of, because you know that I'm currently reading it with my good friend from high school, and that would be Throne of Glass. And I've pointed out that I see her quality of writing, at least from book one to book two, has already improved some. And then I have read the first ACOTAR book, so I know she gets significantly better at writing. I
Yeah.
love that about her. Um, I have read the second book in the Fourth Wing series, and I'm on the third book. And I not only think that Rebecca Yarros does not get better at writing, I think she somehow gets worse. I think that it is so painful to read that second book. And the third book has not started out any better. So I don't know. Is there a question in there? Please
Yeah, I
respond.
think we'll go back to, is it a bad thing that more of these books are getting published and that the quality is not necessarily there? And I think that we have to remember that there have always been these really popular authors that churn out books every 6 months. And
Yeah.
they have these huge teams, and it's in lots of genres. My grandma has a ton of his like mystery authors that do this,
Hmm.
suspense, thriller, like those are genres I don't typically read, so I don't know a ton about them. But you see, like, I don't know, I really can't even think of their names, but they're highly popular. They come out frequently,
James
and
Patterson, David
yes, he's a great
Baldacci,
example. Yeah.
a even well, this is where I struggle because like Stephen King puts out a lot of stuff, but he's also really good at what he does.
There are some monsters out there like Stephen King, Brandon Sanderson. I don't know how I mean, they have huge teams as part of it.
I guess,
They're
yeah.
also you just have some people that can do that and do it so well. And it's probably the only thing going on in their life. And they've been doing it forever. But yeah, I think there's always been these kind of like potato chip books out there that are for entertainment. They're not going to fill you up, but they're really enjoyable in the moment. And also, I think that there's always been like cycles of what's popular genre wise. Like we had
Hmm.
dystopian was like a huge, every other book getting published was dystopian. And now it's not so much that, now it's romantasy. And so I think it's just kind of cyclical. We'll have, it is the moment right now. I don't think it's going to last forever. And then you'll have fewer people being published within that genre. But because it's so popular now, you're going to get a huge variety of, well, huge variety. They're all kind of the same sometimes, um but you have great ones and you have not so great ones. I shouldn't say they're all the same. They are different, but it's just that, you have these pillars of what to kind of expect within the genre.
Hmm.
Um, and I don't think it's going to last forever, but it's very popular right now. So publishers are going to be like, yeah, let's churn this book out in 6 months to a year, even though if someone were doing it on their own, it would take like 3 to 5 years.
Hmm.
And so the quality is just going to reflect the time it takes to churn these out, for good or bad,
Yeah.
in my
I mean,
opinion.
I it is true that you have certainly, I won't say always, but at least since the turn of the 20th century with the rise of the dime novel, you certainly had mass-produced books that were not known to be quality pieces of literature.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, so I guess my question still is out there,
Is that good or bad?
is it good or bad? And you mentioned earlier this idea of how much can be self-published now, because that I mean that completely changes
Yeah.
We have a good friend that is, I believe he's still self-published. I don't think he's ever gone through a publisher, and yet
No.
he makes a living off of it. I say this as if I'm like being coy. I've interviewed him, having been on here.
Yeah.
Um, and I've actually never asked him about any desire to actually go through a traditional publisher, if there's any real added value to that. Um, like I said, he has managed to be successful without one thus far.
Hmm.
Um, and so does that, again, is that opening access, or is that getting rid of a valuable gatekeeper? And when I look at stuff that do go through some traditional publishers and it's still not good, I'm like, well, the gatekeeper wasn't doing its job anyway. So I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing. And so I don't know. I do not know if there's a real answer out there in
I
terms of if it's still better for just us as a society as a whole, even
yeah.
if those aren't the greatest examples of literature, it is still in one way or another helping us be a more literate and more um, bibliophile culture. I don't know.
I think with reading, everyone has different priorities as to why they're reading. Like
Hmm.
sometimes people only read to learn something and that fills their cup. And other people, it's strictly entertainment and that's what they want. I don't think it's our job to tell people, what you should be reading and why. I think that people should have the chance to choose. I think the biggest thing I struggle with when you see these like masses of similar things being published is that we're still seeing the same types of things being pushed. Like romantasy is huge right now, but you're not seeing a lot of like diverse authors being pushed in the
Mm.
genre. Like a lot of it is still cis white like romantasy type stories and you're
Don't you
not
dare say DEI. My channel will get canceled if you do.
I wasn't going to.
Oh
I just
man.
think that we aren't seeing like one of my favorite series right now had a new release this week. Tracy Dion's Legend Born series, her third book came out.
Hmm.
And while I don't see a lot of people calling it romantasy, it is like, and this is because I think it's an urban fantasy with a strong romance subplot. It's not a high fantasy, so it doesn't, a lot of people wouldn't push it into the romantasy category, but it is like so good. I really need you to read it and review the series. It's not finished yet, which is unfortunate, and to add to your huge, rolling list. But
I
she
have
is,
cut back so much this year trying to just get my videos out and to start the second channel. And I was doing better, but then just this like last week or so, I all my Libby, well, you know this, but all my Libby holds, became available, and
mhm. Yeah,
suddenly
I
yeah.
had to delay several this week too. Um, but yeah, so I think that's where I struggle with it is I wish that publishers would more equally push, I don't know, just some other options. But I guess for me as a reader, because that's something I'm looking for, I just need to seek that out. Um, is where I guess I'm landing with that. But I do think that that's what's hard is that you have a lot of stories by similar authors that, the stories are different, but
But
they're
they're
coming
not.
from similar places of life. And so the stories have, similar priorities. And it's just really refreshing to read from authors that, have a different life perspective. And so as a reader, I guess that's something I'm trying to change in my own, reading habits because to combat what's currently going on in, publishing and marketing and all that. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, I mean, I think I try to diversify what I read, although I do also want to know what the most popular thing is, so I can see
Mm-hmm.
like why this is a difficult competing goals here. If the most popular
Yeah.
thing is all this romantasy that is written by, people of similar backgrounds, so that is certainly a challenge, and I don't know how to make other things more popular. And unfortunately, that's what it takes for them to, rise to the surface. So I do not know. That is I'm sure a challenge that I, as a reader, can feel some frustration with, but I'm confident that those that are trying to break through feel it all the more so. So, um,
Yeah.
let us move along, although I had several questions. We've just kind of been all over the place. There were a few
Oh,
points in particular that I wanted to make sure we focus in on to just I don't know, give you your say. See
mm,
if you had
mhm.
more defense of them. Um, and the first thing was that I wanted to look at was um, your thoughts on the history of this particular subgenre, especially since, like you've said, we've frequently had widely popular books, but this is the current thing. At least it seems to be the current thing. And so I don't know if you had anything you wanted to add about this evolution, or how much you think that this is just another stage in this larger conversation of popular genres, or if you think that this could be something that is permanently changing and affecting what is being read and what's being consumed. Because I will say for sure, having seen other things that have been popular in the past, there are defining characteristics of this that I think are distinct. Yes, romance novels have always existed, smut to a certain degree. I would say that this elevates
Always
that to
good.
an extreme, for better or for worse. Uh,
Mhm.
in my opinion, for worse. But their scenes aren't written for me, so I find them at best, useless, and at worst, downright distracting. I felt like in the first Fourth Wing book, I thought, there was only one or two. It didn't really contribute much to the conversation for me, but it also wasn't overly distracting. In the second book, it is distracting. Like it's not just constantly having these scenes, and much more frequently than the first book. She also just a lot of the subtext, or a lot of her inner dialogue has to reference stuff that it makes zero sense to me at that time when I'm sitting here thinking. A matter of fact, I named one of these sections where I wanted to talk. What is it? Kissing in the middle of a battle, Romantasy logic explained, and that's kind of how I feel about a lot of the scenes that she's writing about, where I'm like, what? I don't understand. You tried to just explain to me that everyone is fighting for their lives, and now is the time to have some spice in your writing? That makes no sense to me. I don't understand, but I digress. Um, do you have any thoughts on that?
On
I did ramble. I started by
that,
presenting the question of, do you have some background information you'd like to add? And then I moved into my general my general question of, is specifically the rise of smut something to be conscious of, concerned for, or I don't know, not
mhm.
care?
So I think the background is it wasn't really a term coined until 2008, according to my, Google search. And it wasn't really popularized until ACOTAR came out by Sarah J. Maas,
So
according
you
to Arts
wouldn't
America.
consider Twilight? I mean, I guess the term
This
wasn't
is
being
what's
used
hard
then,
is yeah, it wasn't being used. And this is where
but I would
while
feel like it's like the real progenitor to all this, even though it
so
does not have the spice scenes.
I would call Twilight a paranormal romance is
Okay,
probably how I would characterize that particular
interesting.
series because you got the werewolf and the vampire.
Right.
And
As
there's
opposed to
no
the,
other magic occurring in the series. It's just that they are not really, it's not a huge like plot point, I would say. It's just mostly that these characters have skills because they are a certain thing, but there's the world is our world.
right.
So you would maybe say like it's an urban fantasy with a paranormal romance subgenre is maybe how I would categorize that. And this is kind of going back
So,
to Legendborn. Urban fantasy is like never included in Romantasy. It's
okay.
pretty strictly, I feel like, high fantasy. Um,
So this is a fascinating point to make, because
I think,
I see you like drawing a distinction that I hadn't really thought a lot about. But obviously,
yeah.
if the term romantasy wasn't even being used yet, that's something worth taking note of. And I do see the distinctions that you're making. I guess my follow-up question to that is, though, w um, would you still say though that, I mean, Twilight launched a whole new phase of marketing towards this romantic element of fantasy, whether it is paranormal fantasy, whether it is high medieval fantasy, whether it is urban fantasy, whatever type of fantasy you want to consider it. I can't think of something that comes before that. Then again, I can't think of, before Harry Potter, I can't think of books that have the same, cultural impact as you had with Twilight. I would say first Harry Potter, then Twilight, and I mean these are the first books where you have midnight, bookstores being open till midnight, so you can go to a party, and these are,
Yeah.
your first book series where I think the turnaround for getting massive Hollywood deals was, I mean, people could not do that fast enough to make to somehow turn every series a +1 series. So if it's 7 books in the series, you still have to have 8 movies. Or if it's 4 books in the series, you have to have 5 movies for some inexplicable reason. Well, I mean, I know the reason. People like money.
That drives me nuts too. I think we need to make an important distinction, which is that like I don't want to conflate it with like popularity because this is hard too because Twilight, I was a child when this was coming out. Like I was reading it as a kid or a preteen or whatever. I am only 30 years old, so that's kind of what we're working with. So I can't speak to how like what cultural impact it had
For
because
all of my
I was
viewers,
living
just in
through it.
case you guys wanted to know,
I haven't reflected.
Taylor is the youngest in our extended family.
Yeah,
He is younger than my youngest brother by a few months.
a little bit.
So,
Yeah.
and we really feel this sometimes when we make discussions about when things happened in the world.
But I want to say that during that same time, I was reading a lot of fantasy with romance and a lot of paranormal with romance at the same time. It just wasn't as popular as Twilight. Like, you didn't have moms and daughters and
Right,
husbands and, sons all reading it because it was like a cultural phenomenon.
right.
But like what was one of my favorites? Like A Great and Terrible Beauty. I can't remember the name of the author, but like that was a historical romance with like magic in the background. So I would say that has a lot of similar elements to our current romantasy, but it was obviously not being called romantasy at the time. I don't
Hmm.
even know what they would have categorized that, like in Barnes and Noble or something. But I think there's lots of books though that fall into this like fantasy with romantic subplot or, you know, heavy subplot or equal plot. And that's what's hard is that I think
The main
you have
plot.
authors like for Mistborn, no one is ever asking, is this a romantasy? Even though romance is a big part of the Mistborn trilogy. Like their relationship impacts a lot of things going on in the series. In the first three. I haven't read this. 4, 5, 6. It's totally different, I think.
Four,
But
five, six, seven. Um, yeah, I mean that's a fair point. I mean, same with we always talk about, of course, Wheel of Time as well.
mm,
Relationships is a huge part of Wheel
yeah.
of Time, but I don't think anyone's about to
Game of
call that
Thrones, The
romantasy.
Witcher, like there's lots of these fantasy books. And maybe that's because they're not being published right now. I don't think so. I think it's because they're male authors. If it was a female author, it would immediately, well, maybe not all of them, but some of them. Um,
Yeah,
hard.
so I think there's still definitely room for other points of divergence besides just the gender of the author because I mean, does Wheel of Time have the occasional like very tame spice scene? Yes. But very tame and very occasional. And over the span of like 9,000 pages, uh, that's certainly not a key element of it.
I
Um,
think this is where you and I differ, though. I don't think that it has to have spice or smut to be considered a romantic, like,
I don't think it has to
subplot.
have it, but I do think that's frequently the key thing that draws in a very separate audience. I just finished a swashbuckling um,
That's
romance
fair.
novel, and I mean, it was written by a friend who I think very much made a point of not having any smut in it, and it was clearly also still written, and it was, directed towards a female audience, I would say. Um, and so
Hmm.
you don't have to have the spicing, but I do think that's the thing that usually really distinguishes it. Um, yeah, I mean, I talked about this in my last video with Trevor about reading good materials where I, I because the narrator is in the male voice and I hadn't even like done anything to look up who the author was. I didn't realize that it was a female author and that her books specialized in relationship books related to relationships. And so
Hmm.
when the random spice scene showed up in the middle and it just didn't make any sense to me, and it was also the first time that I even thought, like, wait, what is like, what's the premise of this book? Like, why is this in here? And that was the first time I realized it was written by a woman. And I thought to myself, I mean, that shouldn't bother me because I have many female authors that I love, but
Hmm.
it was the way that it made it very clearly written by a woman at that point that I suddenly realized, oh, I I just I don't care for this scene generally, and so it seemed gratuitous in this instance, and therefore it decreased significantly my experience with the book. Now, had I known that before I read it, I probably still would have rolled my eyes at that scene, but I probably would have been aware of the fact already, like, oh, this is, being written by a woman who wants to have this spice scene in here. And
Hmm.
uh, and so I think I think that that matters. I think that that's a significant difference. And I do think that that is something that you can argue it's not in every romantasy, but I do think that it is certainly a defining quality of the vast majority of them. And if we look at the mass selling ones, I think it's in all of them.
We like to frame male authors in one way versus female authors, even though the subject matter is sometimes similar. It's just approached differently by these authors. So, like, you have, I don't know, we were using like the Game of Thrones series as an example. Like, there's lots of romance and sexual content in those books, but like, no one's ever going to say that he's a romantasy author. Like, no one would even pose the question.
Hmm.
Um, and I was just saying, like, well, I think he writes for a male audience, and so we're inherently like not like asking that. But women, female authors that are doing similar things are like, that's going to be a question they are asking. And I don't know that that's necessarily good or bad. I guess it depends on if the person has the intent of, is this good or bad writing, which going back to our earlier conversation. But it does. It bugs me, I think, that we do this to female authors. We like, is it romantasy or like, is it YA? Which that's like a publisher thing. That's not, that's marketing and publishing. I don't know much about it, but that seems to be
Well, so
where the concept.
I had a realization, I just that so we've been talking, and I feel like one of the things that you've tried to make clear is uh some things that aren't necessarily romantasy, but they are also still clearly written. Their target audience is women. It's
Yeah.
just that you know romance isn't necessarily the primary purpose of it, and I think
Mhm.
this goes to your broader argument of, well, I think we should be okay with there being more things out there that are geared directly towards women. And whether romantasy has an element of it or not is irrelevant. As a matter of fact,
Mhm.
so calling it all romantasy is belittling this idea that there is more literature out there that is geared towards women. Sometimes it's not uncommon for that to have a strong romantic element to it. Sometimes it even has these really spicy scenes, but that's also not even necessarily the point. The point is that there is literature out there that is written specifically to be entertaining to women for whatever reason, and that is, that
I would
deserves more
agree.
respect. Well, by whatever reason. So when we say romantasy, it's not just belittling it, it's trying to specifically say, oh, well, you only like this
Women.
that's written for women because it has romance to it. And I think what you and some others have tried to argue is that even if there's like some romantic interest in this, that's not the point. The point is that this is a novel, and whether that has a strong fantasy tone to it or not isn't the point either. The point is that it is written from the female perspective, the female gaze, the female interests, and
Yeah.
so it is going to draw a female audience, and that is its intention. And you can get over the fact that you just don't like it as much, and you can stop calling all of them romantasy because there is a difference, and you're just belittling them by saying, they're not all, by not just saying that they're geared towards women, but specifically they're geared towards women. And I know because it has this element of romance, which, in and of itself shouldn't be something we necessarily are critical of, let alone refusing to actually see any kind of nuance or distinction within this genre, that this very broad and very diverse genre that appeals to women, and has many different reasons to appeal to women. So that would be my uh recent understanding of trying to create some distinctions.
Well, and I
uh
think, I mean, obviously it's all opinion based, like, and that's the challenge with it is there are no clear definitions, but I think that's why we're seeing this huge boom is because you are seeing more writing geared towards women. And
mhm.
so there's been a huge uptick in women reading and for fun or whatever. Um, and it's like more common for me to ask friends, "Hey, what are you reading?" instead of "What are you watching?" Which that's just so cool, but also hard to comprehend that that's where we're at because, 5, 10 years ago, that never would have been the question.
Yeah, I
So,
agree with that. I agree with that, and I certainly think that acknowledging something's success, even if someone like me can't understand why, or I might find problems with it, or um, or even if I, consciously or subconsciously, I don't know, even if I can acknowledge, well, I think this is what people like about it, I still don't like it. But
and that's okay.
that being said, I'm going to double down on, I really don't think that Rebecca Yarros is a very good writer.
Hmm.
Except she has written something that appeals to lots of people. I think that she fails just some very fundamental, like, elements of dialogue. And so this may be edited out because this may be terrible. This may not go how I want it to at all. But I went through, I think it was Iron Flame, because I hadn't finished.
Onyx
The,
Storm.
yeah, Onyx Storm. Also, I just realized it's going to give some real continuity issues because I'm pretty sure earlier in the interview I said I've started Onyx Storm. Well, fun fact, everyone, I have a haircut and I now need to shave because we did not film this all at once. But we remember what clothes we wore. Uh,
Mhm.
so I think these are all from Iron Flame, and I picked a few excerpts that I thought they were so I actually wanted to look up like the worst excerpts, and I didn't need to do that. I just like started flipping through pages, and as long as I could find something that just didn't have an excess of swear words, because that would have almost immediately been the thing I changed, because I think she uses swear words terribly, not just a lot, but like poorly. It makes no sense the way she uses swear words. I'm like, hey, I know teenagers. No, I know middle schoolers that have a better grasp of how to use swear words than you do. I don't know why you use them the way you do. So that was like one of the hardest things, was like finding segments or sections that just didn't have an excess of swear words that I could I did a few things. I have what she wrote. I have my own like 5 minutes simple editing of it, and then of course I put it into Chat GPT and said, could you make this better? So I'm going to read you each of these, and you're going to tell me, was this Rebecca Yarros writing? Was this me editing what she wrote, or is this ChatGPT's
Oh
variation
gosh.
on it? And this
Okay.
may not go well at all. I just picked some sections, and I don't even remember the order of them. So after I read them to you, I haven't thought this through exactly. So do you want me to read it to you and then you decide, or do you want to hear all three of them and try to sort them out?
I think that my attention span needs to go one by one.
Okay, that's see, and I mean they're only a sentence or two. I couldn't do like a whole paragraph. That would have been painful. All right,
Okay.
so let's start with the first one. The desiccated landscape around what had been a thriving trading post flashes in my memory. Those flags are more than outliers. They're twin splotches of orange in an otherwise untouched area.
Ooh, without context, this is a little jarring. I mean, I'm gonna get it felt like a little clunky, so I'm going, which I'm assuming you picked clunky ones for Rebecca Yaros, so I'm going to
And I
say
didn't
this
have
is the
to.
original.
I didn't have to. Like, it's just picking random. Like,
Well, I know you didn't pick
um,
iconic lines, so we're just going with what we have.
yeah. Okay. So you think this one is Rebecca Yarros? All right.
So I'm gonna
Um,
guess zero
okay.
context.
As I recall, uninhabited land surrounded the shadow of the once flourishing trading outposts. Their markers on the map look like oasis islands in massive desert sea.
I feel like that painted a fine picture. I'm gonna say you edited that one.
Okay.
This
I
is
don't
really hard.
remember.
Maybe I should have had all three. Okay, go on.
Okay. I mean, you can change your answers once you hear all three. The parched remnants of a once bustling trading post flicker through my memory. Those flags aren't just anomalies, they're twin blazes of orange stark against an untouched expanse.
I don't know. Did I like that? I feel like I kind of liked that. It was like, which is
Okay.
that's probably Rebecca Yaros then. You're laughing. Okay.
Okay. I have no idea.
I don't know.
I have to look. So I'll let you lock in your answers and I'll go look and see.
Dang it. Okay, I think I'm changing it to the first one I'm gonna say is AI. The second one I'm gonna say
Okay.
is yours, and the third one I'm gonna say is Rebecca Yaros.
Okay, let's look at the answers. The answers for number one is um why did I put uh-oh. So I believe, although I don't know why my grading key is an O, but the first one is Rebecca Yaros, the second one is me, and the third one is AI.
Oh, I should have kept my original. Ew, I liked the robots best. Oh my gosh, it's embarrassing. Okay.
Okay, let's read the second one. All right, so here we go. How do you say the dragon's name?
Taryn, yeah.
Tarn. Tarn does that weird thing that makes his neck appear boneless, swinging his head around to level slightly narrowed eyes at me for a heartbeat before turning his attention back to the terrain. I can do nothing to remedy the last 9 months besides answer your worthwhile questions now. Care to guess or hear the rest?
Now I want to hear the rest.
Okay. Number two is Terran's Terran performs that uncanny maneuver, his neck seeming almost boneless as he swings his head to fix me with a briefly narrowed gaze before shifting his attention back to the terrain. I cannot change the past 9 months, but I can answer the questions that matter now.
I think that one's yours because you love the word uncanny, but we're gonna move on. Okay.
Terran used his elongated neck to turn his head all the way around to fix his slightly narrowed eyes on me, but only for a moment before looking away and saying, I cannot repair the damage caused by all the deceit of the last 9 months, so I will answer your earnest questions now.
Well, I liked that one the least. Gosh. I don't know. I feel like I'm just gonna keep like going and giving her the benefit of the doubt. Okay, I think she was the first. No, that would be the same pattern as last time. Oh gosh. I'm gonna say, let's change it up. We're gonna say AI is the first one, yours is the second one, and then Rebecca Yaros is the third one.
Okay, so before I ask you to repeat that, so tell me what was the order you liked them the most? Do you remember
Okay, so
or?
I think I think I liked the first one the most.
Okay,
And then the second and third one, well, I think I like the third one the least this time.
okay. So you think you like them in the order that I read them? Well, I will have you know that Rebecca Yarros wrote the first one,
Okay.
AI wrote the second one, and apparently you like mine the least.
Sorry, Spencer.
Uh,
Um, Interesting.
for
Okay,
the
this
record, I
is
am
tricky.
not a professional author. I just wanted to edit
Yeah, yeah,
a
yeah,
little
yeah.
bit.
I
Um,
didn't like the AI description of his neck. It was icky.
uh, you didn't like my description of the neck?
No, the AI description of the neck. Oh
Well,
no.
so I didn't like any of them. I thought it was a weird description to start with.
Well, it was, but
Um, Seemingly almost boneless, seemingly she's the one that says appear boneless. Um, I did say his elongated neck to turn his head all the way around to fix his slightly narrowed eyes on me. I got rid of the boneless. I thought it was stupid.
yeah, boneless
So
is down. But I also
yeah.
didn't like AI's interpretation of the question at the end, like him like revealing things. I thought yours and Rebecca Yarros's approach to that one was better. Okay, what's
Yeah.
the third one?
All right. So this is the last question, and I have an issue. I don't have the answer key written down. So I'm gonna let you tell me what you think, but then I have to go see if I can find the
Okay,
answers. I don't know
cool.
what happened, but I we'll see how this goes.
Okay.
The first year yanks the bloodied daggers from his forearms in rapid succession, grunting in pain as they clattered to the ground. A critical mistake. He may tower over me by nearly a foot, but without those blades, he's at a disadvantage. His sheer size, though, that's the real challenge.
Okay. That feels pretty true to the story. Go on.
With a grunt, the new recruit quickly yanks the blood-stained daggers out of his forearms and lets them fall to the ground. As they clang to the stone, I silently appreciate the advantage he has just provided me. Those blades were his best weapon against me, though he wasn't about to readily discard his height advantage.
Okay, I liked it until the height advantage. Okay.
You liked it until the height advantage?
Yeah.
That's what you said? The first year rips the bloodied daggers out of his forearms in quick succession with an angry grunt, letting them clatter to the ground. His mistake. He might be almost a foot taller, but he'll need those blades if he wants to kill me. His build, though, that's going to be hard to overcome.
Okay, so I think that one's yours. I think that's your edit. Um, I think the second one is Rebecca Yaros, and the first one is AI, is my guess. Um,
Okay.
those I feel like they were all a lot more similar than the first two.
Yeah. And since I made these a while ago, I don't actually remember. Let me see if I can at least find the Chat GPT version to see. Oh my goodness.
There's a lot of dueling in this series because I was like, this sounds just like
Yes,
the
which
first book
I would
too.
think that was interesting, except it makes so little sense most of the time. Like a lot of the dueling is them supposedly practicing, but it sounds really dumb and irresponsible the way they do it. I'm like, then again,
I liked how they did the dueling in Onyx Storm. I thought that was fun.
I don't.
Well, I guess
Well,
spoilers. I don't want to get into my favorite part of that whole thing, but
I don't understand basically anything about the structure of the world that they live in. Like I
yeah.
don't the stakes are constantly changing, or at least the structure and what's at stake are constantly changing, or there's just this like incongruency from the get-go that my mind I can't wrap my head around it. Like they're supposed to, I feel like the way they interact with their leaders and stuff, they're still supposed to be like essentially like teenagers. I mean, they always talk about still being cadets. Yet I also feel like they're very much like
Yeah.
battle-worn individuals by the end of the second book, at the
Mhm.
very least, if not the third book. And so and they do so much that leads that I feel like they would have a significant advantage over whoever the heck their leadership is. And
Mhm.
yet they never seem to be I just do not understand the relationships and the power dynamics in this book. They do not make sense to me. You have a freaking massive dragon that everyone is scared of, and yet she is still constantly like at odds with other leaders. But I don't even understand like what the leadership structure is. How could anyways? But I don't even understand why the dragons fight with them. Like they don't even make that clear. I'm like, what? These dragons clearly have strong opinions, and they don't explain in any way why even having writers is beneficial to them. So why would they agree to this? Anyway, I don't understand the world she's built. I need more sense of like the structure of this. She
Did you
desperately wants them to like still be teenagers for some weird reason without like being
teenagers like
teenagers.
college age, but yeah. Did you finish on a storm?
I did.
Um, so it's she in an interview made the comment that, well, she insinuated that the dragons are lying about their names, like when they tell the writers. So I'm
Well, wasn't that
hopeful.
somewhere, or am I mixing that with something else where they do make a point of like saying like their names are like sacred or something? Like that was part of it, right? Like,
Yeah.
am I misremembering that in the book? Something about sharing what your real name is?
Um, I don't, I mean, I remember it being like, it's a special point between the dragon and the rider,
Hmm.
but um because they made the comment that like the writer is the only one that tells the secretary person like what the name of the dragon is.
Okay.
But they have records. I don't know. It's like that confused me. There's lots of plot holes. I
Oh,
feel
there's
like,
so many things I don't understand.
so I don't know.
I'm baffled at the world she's trying to create, and that's where I'm like, well, that's when I think this isn't great literature because it's not fun. Like you're baffled on purpose. Like I'm revealing a story to you a piece at a time, and that's why you're
Mhm.
baffled. No, you're baffled because it's just not well written in
Yeah.
terms of any kind of world explaining. She does this thing where when she does want to do any kind of exposition, it always has to be like this sense of annoyance, like. Oh, when if she's trying to explain something about the history or something,
Mhm.
she'll be like, "Oh, well, of course we all know," and then she'll go off about trying to explain something important to you, and I'm like, you could have just told us. Like, there's no need to give me the sense that she's annoyed for this exposition. We realize that's what you're doing. That is a very common feature of any type of book or storytelling,
Yeah.
or just this constant she always talks about how like quippy and funny they are, and I'm like, they're not funny. Saying you said something sarcastically is not funny. It could be, but most of the time if something sarcastic is funny, it's because you could tell it was sarcastic. I don't know how many times she actually uses the word sarcastic, but you should not. You almost never should say he said that sarcastically. It should be obvious in what you've written. Or I don't understand who her other fellow like flight mates are. Like she sometimes pretend like she's super close to them, yet I have no real sense of who anybody else is. All I know is her stupid love interest and her and then she'll like sometimes mention other people. But then she gives me no good reason to think that they actually have a strong relationship until suddenly someone will die and she all of a sudden had this like forever powerful bond with them. You're like, you didn't actually make that seem to be the case anywhere else in the book. I don't know why you think I should have any emotional investment in that individual right now. You didn't give me that emotional investment.
I do wish we learned more about the characters. Like we get a little piece for Rhiannon in is it Iron Flame when they go back to her family. Like I liked that.
Hmm.
And I wish we had more moments like that. Like you have it a little bit with Riddick in the third book, but
Well, the second book
overall,
is the
yeah.
first time that she like makes a point of highlighting the fact that there is an aristocracy.
Yeah.
So in the first book, there's a king, but that's all you know, because everyone else you've talked about is some kind of military leader. But then all of a sudden in the second book, you find out that what's his face?
Eric.
Uh, what's that?
Eric.
No, her love interest.
Oh, Zayden.
Zayden. You find out that Zayden is, like a high prince, or I forget what his title is, but supposedly, he is a ruler in his own land. And that annoyed me because I was like, well, it wasn't, you did not set that in the stage in the first book in any way. You didn't give me any sense that there was an aristocracy. I have to worry about nobility. I have to worry about this, this game of houses type crap that is common, but you didn't do that in the first book. Instead, you spent forever telling me, I don't know, how much she hates Zayden, even though she secretly loves Zayden. So
Yeah.
I could obviously go on because I do not think they are good books. I think they're quite bad. But I can't change the fact that they're incredibly popular. And hey, power to people that want to read them. Um, we'll see what happens, and I will at some point get around to actually writing a review for them. I had started, and it was just really hard because I try not to just completely lambast a book, but this is easily like these two books are my least favorite books that I've read in a long time. Uh, I but I stuck with them because I one I wanted to say I had read them, I guess, because I actually really don't fully understand what happened at the end, and I didn't care all that much. I was like, well.
A book.
Um, Of either of I'm book two and book
Yeah.
three. Like when I
Yeah.
finished book two, I thought, oh man, because I already had book three checked out. I was like, I really don't want to turn around and read book three. They're long books, they're not good books. I'm not interested. Fortunately for book three, I guess Arlington County bought too many copies because I was able to renew that one yet again. So I had like more than a month to read that one just because it kept
Yeah.
being able to be renewed. Um, but anyways, well, so I think we're just gonna let the viewers it'll stay a mystery what that third one was. I don't remember, and I have no way of double checking. I I believe I wrote the second one because I'm pretty sure I found the phrasing about his height being the real challenge, both from her and ARI, like really weird, and so
Yeah.
that's why I'm pretty sure I wrote the one about he wouldn't readily discard his height advantage, which is
Okay.
the part you said you didn't like. But uh, that's the only one I remember. I don't remember the other two. I think um,
We'll just say
Yanks,
I'm right. I'm
yeah,
always right.
Yanks or Rips. Both those are like terrible. Okay, so I think she
I think it's for
wrote.
the Yanker.
I think she wrote Rips. So I think the third one was her, and the first one was AI.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure that's what it was. I'm pretty sure it was AI, me, and then her. And I don't remember what you said, but we're going to say that you said that the second one was the best and awesome. The first one was okay, and you thought the third one was terrible. That's how I remember it, right? That's what you said.
Definitely what I said. Yeah.
I really wanted to find like way worse examples, but I was like, I also don't want to spend too much time like digging through a book I didn't like to try and find what I think is evident in almost every paragraph, just like bad editing. But
I think in the future you need to pick like iconic quotes though.
well, so
Like
I
good
tried doing
ones.
that. The internet doesn't hate this book as much as I do. Um,
Yeah.
I went and looked at like Goodreads reviews, and there was one that was very funny. It was the one star review, and like they gave lots of reasons for why they hated it. But what was
Mhm.
funny was how many people responded to that review and said, "Oh, this is hilarious, but I disagree with you because I really liked this book." Or one, I thought one of the responses was really funny when it was like, are you okay? You wrote a lot about something you hate, and I don't understand. Did you expect
Sure.
this to be Shakespeare or something? And I was like, why? Why is that the immediate response? No, I don't expect everything to be Shakespeare, but I do expect, basic editing. Anyway, all right. Did we make our points?
Yeah.
Did I tell you that we were just going to trash Iron Flame and Onyx Storm?
I don't think you had to. I'm pretty good at context clues.
Okay.
Yeah.
I, I think my biggest disappointment with them was I didn't hate Fourth Wing. I definitely struggled with the elements of it, but I thought, oh, I hope the next two are better. And I
Yeah.
honestly thought they got worse in so many ways. Um, and it's not even just because suddenly there were 10 times as many, spicy scenes, but I just felt like she did worse at trying to explain to me the relationships of the various characters. She did worse at trying to explain the larger world dynamics. Even though she suddenly expands them, which I
Yeah.
thought was valuable. Although in the second book, I hated that it seemed like she was going to expand them, and then suddenly she still had her come back to
Back
the
in school.
academy, and I was just
Yeah.
like, "What? That makes no sense. What is
Mhm.
wrong with you?" But anyway, all right. I will give you the final thoughts. This turned into a very different interview. Yeah, go for it.
I think my final point is just, I don't know, kind of the classic don't judge a book by its cover. I think that romantasy is a really fun genre, and there's lots of different books out there outside of, Fourth Wing, ACOTAR. There's lots of things that I don't know, you just find like the little trope that you like and find one that goes in that direction. But I don't know. I think we should let women like what they like, and I think
It's
that
true.
it's a fun genre, and I'm excited to see what the next big thing is, but I'm going to enjoy Romantasy while it is the moment.
Okay.
Yeah.
I agree with everything you said. It doesn't it doesn't help me to like Fourth Wing at all, but I do agree with everything you said.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Taylor. We will have to have a slightly more structured interview some other time where I don't just go off on how much I dislike the Fourth Wing series. But this was fun, and I certainly do enjoy talking books, especially with somebody that enjoys books as much as I do. But we will have to have you back on and figure some other topic and have a better quiz that I actually remember the answers to sometime. But I don't know if you have anything you want to promote, your social media or anything like that. Okay, well, in that case, then we will just
Your
tell the
last
whole
love.
world that you say hello. And thank you very much, Taylor. And don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a comment, turn on those notifications. And until next time, keep those
Keep
pages turning.